Good evening and welcome to our webinar on Women Composers Sunday, which is March 5th, 2023. I'm Eileen Hunt, President of the American Guild of Organists, and I'd like to thank our three wonderful panelists, Nancy Cooper, Lynn Lowy, and Michelle Cardos, all members of our Task Force for Gender Equity. This is our second annual Women's Composers Sunday, presented by AGO in collaboration with the Society for Women Organists in the UK. This webinar is being recorded, and the links for our handout and for the webinar will be available tomorrow. Many thanks to Elizabeth George at AGO headquarters for her assistance in making this possible. It's now my great privilege and pleasure to introduce our friend and colleague, Alison Howell, who joins us from the UK, representing the Society of Women Organists. Welcome, Alison, and we are so delighted to have you with us this evening.
Hello, and thank you for taking the time today to participate in this American Guild of Organists Forum on Women Composers Sunday. I'm Alison Howell, and I'm the Ideas Officer on the committee of the Society of Women Organists in the UK. I live in Bristol, southwest England, and I work as an organist, mainly doing choral accompanying and playing for lots of church services. So, how did Women Composers Sunday start? It was during the lockdown of December 2020 that the Society of Women Organists were holding their AGM on Zoom. Our team had done an awful lot of work on compiling lists of lovely pieces by women composers to play on the organ. The germ of an idea came to me that maybe we could do some sort of event to promote these wonderful pieces and encourage people to play them, maybe with a play a voluntary by a woman composer Sunday each year. Anyway, the idea was enthusiastically pursued, and this resulted in the first Women Composer Sunday in March 2021. We were delighted on this occasion that the Royal College of Organists worked with us as well. Word spread fast, and it was an absolute joy when the American Guild of Organists, the Equality and Diversity team, got in touch and asked if they could promote the event last year. This led to a really truly vibrant international event and much sharing of new repertoire ideas across the Atlantic. And I'm absolutely delighted that you're joining us again this year. Personally, I'm looking forward to the day, and I'm going to be playing some pieces by Sarah MacDonald and Cecilia McDowell, and the church choir are going to be music by women composers and also some hymns. In the UK, we've got a linked event this year, which we're putting on, which is very exciting in conjunction with the Royal School of Church Music. It's a come and sing sacred choral music day by women composers, and it's going to be held on the 15th of July in St Giles, Cripplegate in London. If any of you are in the UK in the summer, do look out for the event and sign up. It should be a wonderful event. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join us today. If you haven't already, please do consider looking on the Society of Women Organists website or the American Guild of Organists website for some new repertoire ideas by women composers. Enjoy learning them for the day, but also please consider playing them all year round as well. Thank you once again. Goodbye.
Thank you, Alison. We have some questions for our panel. The first one, let's start with Nancy. Why is participating in Women Composers Sunday important? Nancy?
Thanks, Eileen. I think that everyone would agree that the minimizing of women's voices is a historical problem, crosses all disciplines, and has been with us for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it is not going away without effort on all of our parts. So participating in Women Composer Sunday and showing your congregations, your audiences, that you value the music of women composers, you value women's voices. I think that's a crucial move in the right direction. And I would point out here that the current AGO membership is over 70% male. So this problem affects our own organization as well. We want women to feel welcome and included and a vital part of the organization, and showing that we value their contributions, not just as players, but as composers, I think is very important.
Your thoughts, Lynn?
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like it's important because we're joining an international celebration of International Women's Day, which has been held since 1909. Again, to celebrate all of the achievements of women anywhere and everywhere. When I went to college, we used Corliss Arnold's comprehensive repertory of organ music. There was not one woman composer in that 2-inch thick volume. And so when I hear Alison Howell talk about, we found all these lovely pieces and we find more and more and more. And I think that's thrilling as we rediscover women's history in this field.
Michelle, share your thoughts with us.
I was going to say, I agree with everything that's been said. And that's how I often look at this, is that it's a chance to expand what we already have. I don't think it's taking away from anything that we already know about the music that we know. Instead, I think it's a chance to recognize so many contributions to music over the years, from the people that have composed to also maybe you find out something about those that performed it. Because by and large, women they've done most of the performances for a lot of these different things over the years. They're the ones out there playing them in the churches and the concert halls. So it's a great chance to expand what you already know and learn something new, and being able to share that with other people makes it just even more worthwhile.
This will be our second Women Composers Sunday. Our friends in the UK were a year ahead of us, so this year will be their third. Michelle, what do you think has changed since Women Composers Sunday started?
I think there's been a lot more uptick in interest in this. I know from doing the newsletter, there are a lot more articles about women organists and women composers that have been popping up. It's really kind of spurred the interest. Now there's more questions about collections of these works. How do we find them in order to use them for something? How do I expand my repertoire? There's been a lot more links that have been available of where you can search for more. So I definitely think it has helped in raising this awareness. And I think by having the second one and hopefully continuing from there, it's going to continue to do so. And again, continue to, maybe for some of us, just give us a reason to learn some new works. I think a lot of us get stuck, we use what we know. So this purposely gives us a chance to maybe reinvent a whole Sunday. And then next thing you know, that becomes part of your repertoire. And you have all these women in your kind of arsenal now. So I think that is why it's important to keep doing it, as well as what we've done since it first started.
Lynn, what are ways in which women can become more involved in Women's Composer Sunday?
Well, there are, of course, lots of ways you can incorporate the music in your worship service, if that's the way that you work. Voluntaries, anthems, hymns. But if you're not in a church or synagogue, think about recitals, lectures, articles. We want to change the landscape. I really hope that we can change our repertory requirements in school so that these pieces by women we start learning them younger and younger. That's what I'd like to see. It's also a great time to talk with your clergy about, is this a good Sunday for a woman priest or pastor to preach?
Do you think that playing music by women speaks for itself, or would you advocate some kind of supplemental information in church bulletins? What might be put in your own bulletin if doing so? Nancy?
I would say, as an educator, that I don't think anyone should ever miss an opportunity to educate the people that they work with. To start with, an easy thing in church bulletins is, if you've only been listing last names of your composers, to start listing both names, and that draws attention to the times that you play music by women. If somebody has an ambiguous name, I encourage you to put a middle name in there so that it clarifies whether this is a woman composer or not. An example would be Lynn Trapp, who is not a woman and for years I thought was. Just showing your congregation what you're playing. And then after that, if you find any particular item of interest about those composers, one sentence in the bulletin every time you play something draws people's attention to what you are programming, and they will remember it over time, the more you bring it up. And lastly, one thing that's really worked in my church is that I have involved my choir in a lot of discussions about what I'm programming and why, and they have taken increasing ownership of the music in the service. They tend to stay for the postludes more than they used to before, and they have their favorites, so that when I play, say, Cecile Chaminade, who they especially love, and Brenda Portman, who they also love, I will hear about it from them, and then I'm hopeful that they occasionally share their opinions with the congregation. We can hope.
What can we do to redress the near absence of women composers in choral and organ repertory? Lynn, do you have some thoughts to share?
Well, I am grateful to Michelle, who put together a fabulous list of resources that will be an aid to everybody in looking for new repertory. SWO has done a fabulous job. They have hundreds altogether, including the choral music, thousands of pieces listed on their website. And if you are not a member of SWO, there's no charge, no cost to joining, and it's a wonderful organization. And also just speak up anytime you're like at the symphony or a choral concert. If there are no women on the program, speak up. Let people know that you think that's a wrong that needs righting.
Michelle, do you have some thoughts to share as well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely lots of different opportunities, even outside, like as we mentioned, the church and synagogue. I think the classroom can be a great place. And I think at different levels too. I've done Women Composers Month for elementary school kids and college kids. And it's amazing what they don't know about even just women's history in general. So there's no wrong time, I think, to talk about it. I think just sometimes you have to get a little bit more creative. I agree, like emailing different places when you see something, making note of what you're doing. If you're on any committees, making, bringing it up in your committee, like, hey, we've mentioned some people, but I haven't heard us mention any women. Can we think of a woman that could also be very fitting for this, that's just as qualified? Because they exist. And I guarantee they're very willing to also talk at the same events. So again, I think it's looking at as by learning more about women's history, bringing in these women composers, it helps you expand your view. And also it's amazing. I know one of my favorite things that I look for is a familiar text of a piece. And then I might see what versions have been written by women. Because then I think, isn't it amazing to continue also the tradition of text that we have through like choral repertoire? It's not a new idea for us to take the same text and reinvent on top of it. And I think you can almost see history unfold when you do that. So some of my ideas.
How can organists work to include more women composers in their own repertory? I'm going to start with Nancy.
Okay, I'm focusing on just one particular area, and that would be listen to YouTube. Go to YouTube with a name of a composer that you know very little about, or that you only know one anthem of, or one prelude, and listen to 10 things, even the first minute of 10 things. You'll find so much more that you like. So let's say, for example, one anthem by Eleanor Daly, who is just a brilliant Canadian composer. Go listen to 10 more. Listen to Brenda Portman, who I will be mentioning yet again shortly, and see what you like. that would be my vote. I think you'll be amazed how quickly you find a whole lot that you want to order, but don't feel like you have to order it first. Listen to it first.
Right.
Lynn, some thoughts?
Absolutely. I agree completely about sharing your musical ideas, making recordings, sharing them. Then we get to listen to everybody's recordings, can be IMSLP and so forth. But I was at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts this weekend, and they have made a conscious commitment to purchase 20 artworks by women every year. And I think we can do a similar thing by saying, you know, I'm going to do a piece by a woman in every worship service going forward. Something like that. It takes some work. I was at the Library of Congress and I looked up Emma Louise Ashford. Maybe you've heard her name. Well, did you know that she wrote 600 pieces and several hundred of them are for organ?
Wow. Michelle, what do you have to add for us?
I'm such a strong advocate for IMSLP. For the reasons that you're saying, I'm always amazed at what I find on there. And it usually just starts with a search about like either woman organist that like I've heard mentioned somewhere, or, you know, I'm always just, I even have like a couple of my favorites that I always recheck because, you know, people find more of the works and they keep adding them on there. And even if the work I don't need isn't on there, it's so interesting to me to see what else they've written. And I know another fun type of thing, and we have some great people. I know Nancy and I know one at least that is working on a project with this, but taking piano works and then by women and then rewriting them for the organ. That I think is also a really awesome venture to go down because there also are a ton of piano works by women. Again, just like expanding your repertoire even more. And for many of them, it doesn't take much to kind of adapt them to the organ. Just sometimes a little thought. And I think it's also a fun way to do, you know, a little bit transcription work, a little bit using your ear in a way that can be very meaningful and sharing something that probably nobody else has played because there's no, you know, recordings or printed music of it anywhere. So that's just another way I think that could be really interesting to try to incorporate more women composers.
Yeah, and Michelle, excuse me for jumping in, but you know, that's so true. When women weren't allowed to be church musicians, they were writing for, you know, dance and theater and opera and so forth, and finding those and making transcriptions of that music like Handel did. You know, that's a great source of repertory.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you for adding that. Thank you.
Elizabeth, do we have any questions from our audience?
We don't. I would encourage everyone to use the Q&A and post some questions. Surely you must have something that you'd like to comment on or add to this really wonderful, stimulating conversation that's occurring.
Oh, we do have one.
We do have some questions, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry that I am not able to see them. Let's see.
Michelle, you want to read those off?
Yeah, so one is, what is the group that Lynn just mentioned and how do I find them? I think they're referring to SWO.
Right. SWO stands for the Society of Women Organists. And you want to look them up and you will see an unbelievable catalog of choral and organ works by women.
And I think they also have lists that they publish. I want to say it's each like quarter.
They do repertory lists, sort of like the Great Host. They'll do repertory like for Lent, Holy Week, and Easter. They'll do it as a group. And so then you get a nice big dump of repertory to look through.
Michelle, do we have some more questions?
Yeah, so another question was about the acronym, which I think we got out. There's also a suggestion about AGO including works of women in the Guild exam repertoire.
Eileen, you should speak to that because
that's a very good point. And we have definitely discussed the importance of including works of women composers in the exam repertoire, but also in the competition repertoire for NIACOP and even for Riccio. Several years ago, we actually used one of the commissioned pieces for the convention, which was a new work by Pamela Decker, as one of the NIACOP pieces for the finals. So the piece was actually premiered at the convention, but it was also played by all of the finalists in the NIACOP competition. And again, it's just a question of opening people's minds to including works of women composers in the repertoire and not simply sticking with the same repertoire that we've used for years, as wonderful as it is. But there's a treasure trove out there of music which definitely should be used more.
Eileen, tell them about what you're thinking, like AGO recitals and regional conventions, the sort of the recommendations that you're making at the national level.
Well, we have some guidelines for national and regional conventions where we require that each convention committee try to be as close to 50-50 as possible in women composers and workshop leaders, commission composers, etc. And I was very happy to see the other day the list coming up for the San Francisco convention, which is in 2024, and they have done a wonderful job promoting diversity in their commissions and their performers. As a matter of fact, for the very first time, and this is very exciting, the St. Cecilia recital, which is one of the more important recitals at the convention, will be played by a woman. Jeanette Fischel is going to be playing in 2024, and that is very exciting. And I'm happy to say that Matthew Burt and his committee made that decision on their own without any discussion with us. So bravo, and it's going to be very exciting to have a female performer for the St. Cecilia recital.
I was part of a choral reading session in 2019, and the publishers were told that they had to have 50% women, and they threw a fit. They said, that's not fair. You know, we don't have that music in our repertory. So what you're doing is you're putting pressure on these people to shape up.
Any more questions, Michelle?
I know there was one comment from Mary Campbell that she did a No Dead White Guy recital in the Philadelphia AGO and shared about it with her students and shared about it with the church congregation, which I think is just so fun that she did that and got to share it with so many groups of people.
I would love to know. Oh,
no, go ahead, Nancy, please.
I would love to know from Mary if that was the actual title on the program. Because I kind of think it should be. So
I would love her to share that program.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, please send it, because I do all the newsletters, so I'm always looking for programs and articles and anything that seems interesting about women composers, about women organists that we can share. So please do pass these things on.
Mary says that was how she advertised it. And
wow.
if we talked over each other and you all couldn't hear us, it was actually No Dead White Guy.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Mary. We love you.
Excellent, excellent. I was chatting last week with a colleague, a friend, and she was telling me that she had recently played an organ recital on a noonday series, and she had sent in her program 2 or 3 months early. And as it got closer to the date, my friend realized that she didn't have any composition by a female composer on her program. So she quickly contacted the host and asked if she might make a slight substitution in her program. And unfortunately, the host told her, no, it was too late. The program material had already been printed. So my friend said she decided that recital was going to be her last recital without a female composer. So that's pretty exciting.
Can I butt in one more time? I'm so sorry. Her program included Chaminade, Mary Howe, Florence Price, and Jean Demessieux. Mary Campbell, I just found a second piece by Mary Howe. So I want to share that with you.
Do you want to tell us about Mary Howe?
Well, I do, but I'm talking too much. Mary Howe is a
No.
very prolific DC composer. She was born in 1882, and she wrote one piece called Elegy, which is dynamite. It's rich orchestral stuff. The woman had a degree in composition from Peabody in 1913. This is very unusual. She's a fine composer. She wrote mostly orchestral things, but she wrote this elegy, and she also wrote another piece which nobody had found. Well, I found it in the Library of Congress. It's called a Siciliano for a Wedding. And so I have the score. The heirs to Mary Howe said I am welcome to share it, to play it, perform it. So I really would love to do that. It's a gorgeous piece.
There's so much wonderful music out there yet to be discovered, and
Exactly.
congratulations to you for going forward and making that research your
But
own.
it's in manuscript, you know, so it's right there. It was in it, and it needs a life beyond that manuscript.
Absolutely, very exciting.
Michelle, I see more questions. Do you want to jump in on those?
Yeah, I was going to say the next one that I was going to bring up was by James Thomas Howard. You may have heard of him. Are there one or more specific metrics that serve as a goal for Women Composer Sunday, March 5th? Should everyone play at least one piece by a woman that day? That's a great question.
Nancy, what are your thoughts?
Well, the first thing that I thought of actually is that not everybody works in the church. So it could be difficult for everyone to play at least one piece. But if you're going to play, if you're in the church service, so you have a venue to play, I think if you're going to do one, you might as well do one more. I mean, why not do the prelude and the postlude? If you're going to do the prelude and the postlude, why not do a communion hymn? Why not do the anthem? But start out with the prelude and postlude. That'd be my vote. I think everyone should try. So I'll qualify it. Try to play.
And there's a lot of material out there, as we're all discovering. Michelle has made a wonderful resource list, which if you need to learn a piece between now and March 5th, there's lots of material available, and in our handout, you'll get some good information. I need to make an aside here and tell everyone that James Thomashower, our wonderful executive director, has just celebrated his 25th anniversary with AGO. So if you haven't already, send him an email of congratulations and thank him for 25 years of dedicated service to our wonderful organization. Thank you, James. Michelle, back to questions.
One of these questions, it was answered, but I think it's worth mentioning here. Laura Ross asked if the newsletter you mentioned is from Swell, or is there something different that we should sign up for? And I think the answer is yes to both, because Swell does have one, which is really great. And then we also have one with the Gender Equity Task Force, which you can find on the AGO website and sign up for it there.
And Michelle is the editor and creator of that newsletter. It comes out monthly. And if you go on the AGO website and take a look for it, you can sign up to have that delivered directly to your inbox each month. It's a great resource. So congratulations, Michelle, for doing such a wonderful job with that. Yay. Any other questions?
It's been great for me. So
yeah, well, it's been even better for us. Do we have another question?
I think
I was going to suggest, what are some of the people going to play? Do our participants have something selected?
Nancy, how about you?
Oh, okay. I've been mentioning Brenda Portman, so I'll say I'm going to play her meditation on Finlandia, which is from a volume of her compositions called Peace Like a River. And I've played it several times in church, and people who've never commented on the music before made a point of commenting then. It is a beautiful setting of Finlandia.
Thank you. Lynn?
Well, I'm going to play that Mary Howe Siciliana for the prelude, and then for for the postlude, the Elfrida Andre finale from her Symphony No. 1. She was a Swedish composer born 1841. She was the first woman cathedral organist in all of Europe. The second one was in 1987.
Wow. Wow.
And it's a fabulous, she's also the first woman to write an organ symphony, which is a glorious piece. And so I'm playing the finale to that.
Thank you. Michelle, how about you?
Yeah, so one of the pieces I'm playing is actually my tangent before about MSLP. One of the people that I was looking into was Florence B. Price. And I found one of her works, actually not through there, but I actually went and purchased it. It's In Quiet Mood. And it's really,
I love that.
It's beautiful. And I've been really falling in love with it lately and just her works in general. I have a friend who's actually doing, not to give too away of his project away, but he's taking her symphony and writing it for organ with MIDI incorporated. So the whole symphony will be organ to play it, since it's not one of like her one of her played works. So I'll be incorporating that. And then I actually talked with one of our congregation members at our church, and I was telling her about Women Composer Sunday, which is why I also encourage you to talk to the congregation and your choir about this, because I learned that she actually had a whole list from the Presbyterian hymnal of all the women in it that she had already compiled. And she's like, oh yeah, it's separated by the text, or if you want the hymn tune, or if you want both. Every woman that is in that book, I have on this list. And it's been an amazing resource, because now we can purposefully say, hey, I really have a text that, I want to use, or some idea. Oh, well, now this list goes right with our hymnal. So I definitely encourage you also to talk to your people, because they have a lot of good ideas too, and can help in unexpected ways.
What a great resource that is. My goodness, wow. It's so exciting that Florence Price's music is finally becoming known. She studied here in Boston at the New England Conservatory and was just a fantastic musician and a fantastic student, but her works have remained in oblivion until just recently. And I recently heard a wonderful interview on NPR with Scott Simon talking to Maren Alsop, who recently programmed a concert with the Chicago Symphony of all female composers, including some music of Florence Price. So
wow.
She is starting to get some performances by major symphony orchestras, which is long overdue and very well deserved. Excellent. Any other comments? Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I thank especially all three panelists for your insights and for your good words. I thank Elizabeth for making this all possible and setting up our webinar. And I thank everyone who listened tonight or who will listen in the future. And I challenge all of us to get out there and play some music of women composers, program it, encourage other performances, and let's get the good word out. Thank you and good night.